In this video, we're going to learn how to create a Svelte Kit project and use it to set up Firebase Authentication. So let's get started. I'm going to copy this. I'm already in the folder I want, so I'm just going to do a dot. I'm going to do the skeleton project. I'm going to do it with TypeScript, no ESLinting, no prettier. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to clear, and then I'm going to do an npm install. And that should install everything. And we'll just run the project just to make sure it works. And it should work. And it does, which is great. So if I go into my SRC and my routes, you can see I have this index.svelte file. And if I just delete this, you can see it just goes away like that. So it's super fast for updating. So that's really great. I'm going to stop the server. And I'm going to install some dependencies. I'm going to install Sveltestrap, which we'll need later, or we'll need now. And I'm going to install Firebase, which we will need. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Firebase while that's installing. Click here. I'm going to go to Noah's videos, and we're going to add a Firebase website, and we're going to call this Firebase YouTube recipe, because we're building a recipe site. I'm going to set up Firebase hosting. We'll just create a new one. Hopefully this isn't taken. Site, we'll just say Svelte. There we go. Kit. Or maybe this isn't. Okay, cool. So we'll use this one. We'll register. And then we'll click next. We're not going to worry about that. I've already installed these, but I recommend you do the same. And we'll do that later, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So I'm going to go to the one that we created, which is this one. We'll click on that config. And you can see we have a whole bunch of options. You can use the CDN. We're going to use the npm because we already installed it. And I'm going to clear, and let's go ahead and set it up. So to set it up, we're going to need to do this in our layout folder. So you do who underscores and then layout. And this is going to be basically our root layout. So every page will have a layout. So if I do an npm run dev right now, and this got me for a little bit, if I refresh this page, you'll see nothing's there. And the reasons nothing's there is that you need to have a slot. So if I put a slot right here, you'll see everything appears. So that's really good. So next I'm going to use a script with a lang of ts. And we'll do another script. And that's good. Okay. So I'm just going to import the container from Sveltestrap. And Sveltestrap's pretty cool. They just upgraded really recently to 5.0. So if you're using Sveltestrap in a new project, you should be using, you'll probably be using out of the box 5.0. And that'll put everything in a container. And that's looking good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all this. And we'll just have a generic page right here. We'll just do our row and our call. And this is just like Bootstrap, just with components. And we'll do an H1, and we'll say, welcome to the recipe site. And that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so we got that going. We're going to make this a little bit smaller because we don't need it super big. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize our Firebase app. So to do that, we're going to import Firebase from Firebase/app. You need the /app, otherwise you'll get a security warning, and that's bad. And next we're going to import Firebase auth. That'll allow us to use the authentication. Once that's done, we're going to do an on mount, and the on mount will it's just like Svelte, so it'll just run. In fact, it is Svelte. It'll run when the page loads. So we need to load Firebase once the page loads. If we go back here, you can see we've got our Firebase config. I'm just going to copy and paste that into the on mount. And then I'm going to do Firebase. Oops, it's not letting me do it. No big deal. So we'll do Firebase, and then we'll do Initialize App with the Firebase config. Okay, so now we've initialized the app, which is great. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our login page. That's pretty easy. We'll go to File, Login.Svelte, and we're going to do a script with a lang of TS, once again, so that allows us to use TypeScript in our Svelte files. And then we're going to import, actually we can just copy this, we can copy this whole thing, and we'll just paste it in here. And then we'll say login with Google, because we're going to create a login with Google. You can see my G key is not working, no big deal. We'll copy this again, and except for in this row, we'll have a button. So let me do that in IMG, SRC, and an alt, login with Google. And we don't have our login with Google button, but what you will notice is that if I go here to /login, oops, and spell that right, no big deal. You can see it does say login with Google. And one thing to note is that the name, so this login corresponds with the page name. So anytime you create a page that isn't like _layout or _error, you're creating a page in Svelte. So we just created a login page. Let's go ahead and grab that login with Google button, which should be pretty easy to get. I'm going to go ahead and copy one of these, paste them in, and oops, forgot, before we do that, we need to create a folder called static. And the static folder will contain all of our public images or anything we want public. So I'm going to call this login with Google. Spell Google right, because they're watching. So what you'll notice is that if I go here, I should be able to get that image. I wonder if it'll block me. Maybe not, but it'll work. You'll see. So let's go back to our thing, and we'll do /login with google.png, and then we'll go to /login. Oops, I didn't spell it right. And we should see a login with Google button, hopefully. So whenever it does this stuff, it's no big deal. You just need to restart. So it's just something weird is going on. They're working out the bugs. I'm not too worried about it because it restarts really quick. And you can see we have our login with Google. Let's go ahead and add a style to this. So we'll do style. It'll push it to the bottom, but that's okay. We'll do an MRG, and we'll just say cursor. Oops, cursor move, or pointer. There we go. So that'll make it look like they can click on it, which they can. So that's good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an async function. Let me make this a little bit bigger, called login with Google. And we'll hook that function up to our image with an on click. And login with Google. Let's go ahead and let the IDE autocomplete. And then this is just being copied and pasted directly from the Google documentation, which is great. I just changed it to use a .then instead of the async await instead of a .then. So we're getting this error, and that means that we need to import Firebase. Once again, we'll make sure that we import it from Firebase /app and not anywhere else. So that looks good. So in theory, if I click on this button, I'll be taken to the Google login page, and I'll be able to log in with Google. And this is great. So now I'm able to log in, which is awesome. So the next step is to set up a listener. not a listener, but a store that will change whenever our Firebase login state changes. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create a stores folder, and then I'm going to create a new file called auth store. Now this is just my way of doing it. Everyone has their own way. So I'm not saying my way or the highway. So create a writable store from svelte/store, and then we're going to create an auth store variable, and we're going to set that to writable. What's cool about using TypeScript is that we have these angle brackets where we can specify what the object will look like. So we'll say logged in, and we'll set that to a Boolean. Actually, I said is logged in. It's logged in. We'll say user, and we'll set that equal to a Firebase type. So we'll say type Firebase from Firebase app, and this won't import it, but will allow us to use the type. So we'll say Firebase user info, and then we'll do another thing called Firebase controlled, and this will be whether Firebase is on or controlling the app, and we'll set that to a Boolean, and we'll set this user to, sometimes it'll be set, sometimes it won't be. So what we can say is logged in is false by default, and Firebase controller, not controlled, is false. So we'll set that. Then we need to export it, which is pretty easy. So I do export default, and then what I do is I just export the functions that I need. So I need the subscribe function, so offstore.subscribe, and I also need the set function, so I'll do offstore.set. That just allows me to be super picky about how the store is used. So we've got our store. It's looking really great. Next, I'm going to import it. So I'm going to import auth store from ... stores auth store. So that's cool. Now that we have it imported, we're ready to listen to Firebase events. So if I do firebase.auth, I wouldn't do that. On state change is what I want. Let me go ahead and get out of this. And this will take in a callback with a user. And this will allow us to change the state. So if I do authstore.set, it's kind of cool because it gives us what we need to set. So we can say, because we're using TypeScript, so we can say is logged in. Does the user does not equal null. Then we can say user, and then we can say Firebase controlled, and we can set that to true because that will always be true. And we have our auth store. So anytime somebody's logged in, we can listen to this store. So if we go to our home page, we can actually add some logic based on that. So we can import our auth store from stores, auth store, and then we can say, we can just do a simple if. We can say if $auth store is logged in, and if, and then we can say, we can echo auth store dot user dot email. So this in theory should display my email, and it does, which is great. The one thing we want to do though with this isn't just display, but we also want to prevent people from viewing certain sites, certain pages if they're not supposed to. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that for the recipe site that we're building. I'm going to create a new file called add recipe. And what we'll do is we'll copy all of this. And this always needs to have a .svelte. So making mistakes, not a big deal. And I'm going to say add recipe. We're not going to build the form, but what we will do is use the auth store. So what we'll say is authstore.subscribe. And notice we don't have to put in an on mount, which is great. And what we can say is info. We can say if info, or we can even do a what we can even do is a deconstructor. So we can say is logged in, and we can say Firebase controlled. So if is logged in is false and Firebase controlled is true, we're going to, so we need to make this async. I just realized that because we're going to use the goto function, which is used for navigation. So I can say goto, and what we're going to do is we're going to direct them to the login page. And that should not work for us because we're already logged in. So if I go to add recipe, yeah, so it's freezing up. So just go ahead and nuke it and restart it. It's not a big deal. So you can see it's not redirecting us. Let's go ahead and create a quick logout button in our index page. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to import the button from Svelte, and then we'll do a row and a column, and we'll just do a button with a color of danger, and then we'll say logout. And then you can just use this like you would a normal button as far as on click goes. We'll say logout, and this is just to show you that it works. So we'll say function, I think it's an async function that we need, log out, and then we'll say we need to import Firebase as well. So we'll import that Firebase from Firebase app, and we'll do Firebase auth. I think is it auth? It's auth. So let me look at how I did it in the login page. It's auth. Yeah, so it should be something like, yeah, there should be like a logout. Let me go back to the index. Just see if there is. There should be something. Oh, I think it's sign out. That's why. Sign out. Yeah. So that's what it is. And this is a promise. So we need to do an await. And if this was a professional app, I'd write it in a try catch. It's not, so it's no big deal. So now if we go here, we have this little logout button. We can click on it. And what we can actually do too is we can only show this if they're logged in. So we can say $auth store if they're not logged in, is logged in. So if they're not logged in, or if they are logged in, they'll see the logout button. Later on, we'll put this in the nav. Let's see what we did wrong. So, oh yeah, so it misimported that. That's no big deal. So that happens. Okay, so now we're logged in, so we can see the logout button. I click logout, you can see it goes away. And then if I click add recipe, it should redirect me. It redirects me to the wrong page, which you guys probably noticed because my G key's messed up. But now if I go to add recipe, again, it should take me to the login page, and it does. So that's how you would do login with Firebase and Sveltestrap and SvelteKit. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you on the flip side. If you have any feedback, please let me know. And I know I keep pitching this, but if you want to give a Svelte talk, please let me know. We would love to have you at the Bay Area Svelte meetup. It's still virtual and probably will remain that way for the foreseeable future. So please let me know, and I will catch you all on the flip side.